Right. Joining us now, Democratic strategist Morris Katz. He worked on campaigns for New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani and Graham Plattner in Maine. Did really well with the Mamdani campaign.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about the Democrats more broadly. There is a debate right now about whether the party needs to reconcile with what happened in 2024. Wes Moore says no. Others say yeah, and the party needs to understand that running Joe Biden again was a huge mistake and admit it, come to terms with it. Where do you fall?
I mean, I think we don't need an autopsy to tell us that running Joe Biden again was a big mistake and that we need dramatic change in the party. I do think there's a divergence of opinions around what makes the party brand toxic right now. And understanding what were at the root causes of that kind of erosion with working class voters, the erosion of faith in our party, is really important.
So how do you understand it? What is it?
I mean, I think the issue is that too often it's not clear who we're fighting for or who we're fighting against. We can't prosecute a case against corruption if we have corruption in our own ranks. We can't run against greedy corporations when those same greedy corporations are funding our campaigns. And we can't speak with moral clarity on issues when I think what you saw in Gaza and the way the Harris and Biden administration talks around that and the way that kind of sunk the campaign. And all of those, I think, are realities that are probably reflected in that autopsy.
There are a lot of people in the middle and the independents who would hear that and say, you know, I believe in a capitalist society, and I get worried that when you start talking about that, you get into socialism. I'm not into that. There are people who say, you know, maybe what's happening in the Middle East, there are some clear-cut issues, but there's some other areas where I'm not so sure about it. And there is like kind of a squishy middle that gets worried about the Democratic Party becoming very defined on certain hot-button issues like that. How do you deal with it?
I think there's a really big difference in between the kind of pundit class moderates and the voter moderates. And I think what we have is a lot of voters who might identify as moderate, but what they identify more than anything else is as people deeply, deeply angry with the political establishment and with an economy that's fundamentally broken. And what we then have in the kind of consultant and pundit class moderate is like, oh, we just want to lower the temperature and get along. And I think that's actually not where voters are right now.
So Mamdani was very successful in focusing on affordability and really only affordability here in New York City. There were some other issues involved, but mostly it was him talking about affordability. Right now, we were just talking for a while about Todd Blanche and this $1.8 billion fund. People will call it a slush fund. For anyone who thinks they were politically persecuted by the last administration. It could be January 6ers. It could be campaign donors. How do Democrats deal with what we are experiencing with this Trump administration? Is it a good idea to go after all the corruption and talk about it? Or is it a good idea to do what Mamdani did and only talk about affordability and the economy?
I think you need to connect the dots for people. And, you know, Donald Trump is doing this, and it's wrong when he's doing it. But it's also he's spending that money there instead of spending that money reopening the factories he said he'd reopen, or instead of raising wages. Like, how does he have money for a slush fund for insurrectionists but doesn't have money for Medicaid? That's not in any way connected with the campaign he ran. And I think we can focus on both of those things at the same time, because the reality is we have a president who ran on addressing an affordability crisis and stopping endless wars and taking on corruption. And what we have is the most corrupt administration in American history. What we have is a new forever war and a worsening affordability crisis.
Let me ask you about Graham Plattner. There's a lot of hand-wringing within the Democratic Party about what to do with him, because on the one hand, he's a great speaker and he is charismatic. But on the other hand, he's got some issues in his past that have been ugly. How is he going to be able to deal with that in a general election against Susan Collins, who has proven to be a survivor?
I think that people are really hungry for candidates who aren't politicians, who are real people, working class people who understand the realities that the average American is facing right now. And they understand that when real people run for office, that embodies the good parts of it. It also embodies realities of people who've lived real lives, people who, you know, like for Graham's instance, served a decade overseas, struggled with PTSD, you know, had not done everything his entire life planning to run for president, like so many politicians who've lost trust. And he talks about this, and I think his is a story of redemption. And if we don't believe in redemption, then what's the point in this political project?
I want to play another candidate who is going viral. It's not Graham Plattner. It's maybe not some of the Democrats like, but his campaign message is striking a chord, and this is Spencer Pratt. Here's his latest video for the race for mayor of LA.
Now this is a story all about how my life take a minute to run for mayor. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. In West Los Angeles, Palisades, in my backyard is where I spent most of my days. Feeding hummingbirds, relaxing all cool, avoiding all the bums outside of the school. When a couple...
Okay. Spencer Pratt, Meghan McCain said this is the way that this generation, my generation, elder millennials, need to talk to people if you want to be a politician.
I mean, I don't know if I want to see every politician engaging in the exact same practices, but I think it does speak to something. He's breaking through.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the fact
he's
that
addressing an issue in Los Angeles that people, you know, get into the consultant speech on.
Absolutely. And like that is the thing to me where he communicates in a way that no other politician's communicating, and actually does relate to the Graham thing in the sense of there's an authenticity there that I think really attracts people.
And there are Democrats who support him and will say, I'm a Democrat, but I also look around the city of Los Angeles and the homeless problem is real. There seems to be a drug issue going on there, and it's not being addressed by the very people who say that they're going to address it humanely. And they look at the Democratic Party and they say, you're full of a bunch of talk, and this is what Wes Moore was talking about. But all you do is give out, you know, proposals and 9-point plans, and you don't actually get anything done.
I mean, that's when I see someone like Spencer Pratt succeeding, I think it's an indictment on us as a Democratic Party. We need to, and this is why, you know, I think Mayor Mamdani has done a remarkable job and laid a platform where it's not just words. Every day you're seeing different actions that are improving the quality of life in New York. And that's the kind of party we need to be, and that hasn't been the result in LA a lot. And that's kind of left this pathway for someone to take that lane.
Also, more broadly, I'm going to put up on the screen Donald Trump's numbers on the poorly educated. And we bring this up because Donald Trump really embraced, you know, the poorly educated love me. I remember I was in a rally in Vegas in early 2016. It was right after the South Carolina primaries. He got some results back and he was reading them out. And he said, oh, I love the poorly educated. And it was him saying, I connect with the working class. I connect with all types of people. I may be an elitist, but I understand you. And people really responded to that. How does the Democratic Party win back these voters or win over these voters?
I mean, I think we need to look at some of the things that, frankly, Donald Trump was able to campaign on, and also some of the things Spencer Pratt is campaigning on. They're lying. And I think we can be clear about that, and we have a lot of points we can make to reveal that. But in order to take those voters in, I think we need to take seriously what they have been expressing in their support of them, which is exactly what you said, a deep frustration that the Democratic Party is more interested in lecturing than listening, and in kind of proving moral points than in tangibly improving people's lives.
Can this get turned around in the next 2 years?
With Democrats like Graham Plattner, I think absolutely.
All right. Morris Katz, really good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.